Welcome, welcome. So this is Richard here from the Sonia and Richard Show. It's just Sonia. It's just Richard here this evening. Sonia's still on annual leave, so the show must go on. And I want to talk about trusts. Surprise, surprise. But this is a slightly different angle to trusts. I'm very passionate about trusts. Uh, and they're very, very powerful. And I think sometimes we don't realize how powerful they can be. Uh, Now, I have a few clients where, uh, you know, well, let me start from the beginning. Actually, makes more sense. So we talked about trust in the past. Like your standard types of trust, like discretionary trust and bare trust, and etc. etc. But this the very essence of trust. Let's talk about that first. It's really important. So the rules of administration of trusts. So like, for example, you don't need to use the word trust for trust to exist. Um, Trusts reside in a jurisdiction called equity. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of it, equity jurisdiction, but that's the jurisdiction. That's my words out where it actually resides, not the common law. And that's very important when you're dealing with trust, because equity looks at the heart or the spirit of a matter, looks at the facts to obtain the results. It doesn't go by a hard rule or letter. Okay, it looks at the spirit of a matter and establishes, based on the matter and based on historical um, precedents or judgments, how to make a final decision. So they're called maxims. There's, I think, 12 of them. All right. And one of the most common maxims, if I can recall, is he who seeks equity must do. It's about fairness, right? About being right. Um, and so it really starts to get you to understand, how did trust even come about in the first place. And it's not, I can prove it. It's not all about, soldiers going off to war in the medieval times and protecting their use of land. It may have been around those times, but that's not the first trust. It's actually biblical, and I can prove that quite easily. But I digress. So um, now, one of the parts of trust that's really, really interesting, I don't want to go to sleep, so I'm trying to get to the point really quick, is a trust actually can be created verbally before it's written down. Only certain types of trusts need to be expressed in writing. And normally it needs to be expressed in writing before an event takes place. So let's give you an example. Let's just say um, I created a trust for some money or even for some land of some form or equity or whatever it might be. Um, then the trust stands in terms of the intent to create a trust. The trustee was selected, a beneficiary was nominated. There's something called the free rules of certainty. Certainty of objects, which is basically who the beneficiaries are. If there's no beneficiary, there's no trust. Was an intention to create a trust in the first place. That's the second one. And number three, the subject matter, what's the property. So long as you can establish those three parts, we have a trust. But it can be done by parole or verbally. And so I've got clients who have situations where their intention was really clear, especially with property. All right. So we call it an implied trust, where maybe someone couldn't afford the mortgage, they've gone on the property, on the mortgage with that other person. Let's say a child and their parent. The parents in the older years, the child just decided, look, let me just help the parent out. I'll use my credentials within my earnings or whatnot, but I don't want anything to do with the property. The property belongs to my folks. And I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not going to pay the mortgage. I'm not going to benefit. I don't want to live there. I just want to help my folks get on the ladder. Or it could be vice versa. Maybe parents like, look, I want to help my children get on the ladder. I'll put my name, I'll put a deposit down, and I'll put my name down to help them get on the ladder. But I don't live with the property. I don't want anything to do with it. It's theirs. It's my child's. Um, I just want them to get on the ladder. So, there's scenarios like that, and there's variants and nuances, but ultimately that's a scenario that's taken place. And there's lots of people who's probably done that. Now, especially when it comes to property where they don't live in it and it's rented out, or even if it's lived in, because the parent doesn't live in it, if it's sold and their name's on it, it could trigger two main taxes: capital gains tax during their lifetime and inheritance tax upon their death, because it still forms part of their estate. So this is where I talk about an event taking place. So a death event might take place, or a sale might take place. So then we have to get these trusts, which was done by parole, done in words or by deeds. We can prove it, but it needs to be expressed or declared in writing. This is where the law will now kick in. Law of Property Act 1925 will kick in to say, well, look, as long as it's expressed in writing before an event takes place, then the trust stands. Otherwise, how do we prove? Yeah, you can't really take judgment on a moral decision. The court can step in. There's case law to support that. It can construe a scenario, or it might result in a scenario, and the court can step in. But you don't really want the court to get involved unless it's absolutely necessary. And so there's scenarios really where people can save themselves a lot of money, a lot of anguish. You probably, you might know someone where they're trying to get their name off the property for years, but maybe the broker or whatever just couldn't do it. The lender wouldn't let them come off, or they're going to have to pay a huge amount of capital gains tax if they came off the property, etc., etc. Well, one of using the notion of an implied trust, if it exists, you can't just magic it up out of nowhere. But if the facts align and can be proven, and documented, and you can justify it, then having a deep understanding of trusts, and understanding the heart of equity, and knowing whether it's based on facts and not just on the black and the white, so to speak, what's the letter that's been written down, then it has its place where a lot of families can be free of turmoil, especially when it comes to taxation, especially when it comes to inheritance tax planning, um, saving for capital gains tax. It's a major deal. So we had scenarios where uh, children have bought or named on the property, but the parents live in the property, but the parents are not actually named, so they can't claim like their allowances for a residential a nil rate ban, for example. Um, and the children themselves have a large enough estate that they've got an inheritance tax liability themselves. So that's an implied trust scenario. Implied trust. My words are gibbering around all sorts today. I'm going to take my time. But yeah, that's a scenario that can really assist. Again, I've mentioned before, maybe you got parents buying property for children, or children stepping in on behalf of parents, or some kind of variance. So it's just important to pay attention to that. Maybe you may not have been aware of that before, and now I've mentioned this, is like, oh my days, maybe this could be something of interest to you that could really help. And as I said, it is important that it's not made up, because ultimately it could be investigated in the future. And if you're going to tell stories, you're going to get done. But if it's genuine, then it's genuine, and so you can really help a lot of families, which you have done, to really give them peace of mind, and save a lot of money, both from capital gains tax, as I said, and um, inheritance tax. Because properties, as I say, do accumulate a lot of money over time, over the years, especially with inflation rising. So, in terms of the interesting side of trust, that's one of the interesting sides of trust I find really powerful. Being able to understand it to a nuance that, once you get the spirit of the matter, you can really help a lot of families um, save, and put that wealth where it needs to be, pass it down generationally where it needs to be, rather than it being unnecessarily eroded. Can be prevented with planning, through certain types of taxes. So that's really something I was close to my heart. I wanted to share. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's something that people should understand, that it's not just about the documentation and um, uh, is asset protection in some instances, but it's not the standard status quo of trusts. It's actually quite nuanced, and it takes a bit of understanding to appreciate that. So again, you may be hearing this and thinking, "Wow, okay, this kind of triggers a situation." maybe it's worth, dropping a comment or an email or a message or DM, just saying, Richard, do you mind having a chat? See what if there's anything in this or not. It could help. All right. So that's really something I wanted to kind of highlight in the spirit of understanding how trusts work, knowing that there are trust can be created. In my opinion, probably trusts are at the heart of pretty much most commercial relationships. We just don't realize it, based on what you say and the spirit of a matter. It could even from something that's dealing with, dare I say it, parking tickets or whatnot. If you understand the commercial relationship versus the trust one, it's two different worlds. Let me not digress. So, I just wanted to kind of share that. It's probably a shorter session this evening, but again, education is key for us, and we want to make sure we pass on and help people as much as possible to do that. So yeah, I think I'll wrap up there. I'm rambling, but again, any comments or questions, feel free to drop a comment below, whether you're catching this live on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Um, Feel free to share, follow, subscribe, all those things that would be very, very helpful and beneficial to us. Facebook Live as well. If you're catching this on our Facebook channel, then please feel free to do so as well. All right. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there, short and sweet, but something to ponder and think about. And we'll see you on next week. The dynamic duo, as they say, with more content to share and to educate. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening. Or if you're catching this on a replay, thanks for checking us out. Cheers.